Virginia, first, you're writing a book about them. Tell us about Boko Haram.
Well, Boko Haram is an Islamist sect that originated in the north of Nigeria around 2002. And originally they were an isolated community espousing Salafist Islamic ideology and looking at the Taliban as the ideal societal model around which they should structure their own community.
So they were like a new Afghanistan in Africa, effectively?
Sort of. Locals would nickname them the Nigerian Taliban, and they even displayed the Afghan flag in their original base. However, they did not have any connection with the real Taliban in Afghanistan.
So they align themselves with the Taliban, Al-Qaeda as well, Andrew. So why, for much of the early part of the 21st century, we heard very little about them?
Well, they've only emerged onto the international terrorist scene relatively recently, and for many people, of course, this appalling episode of the kidnap of these schoolgirls will be the first they have ever heard about them. But this is an appalling attack on civilization in Nigeria, and I'm astonished that it's taken so long for this awful event to reach major public prominence, particularly when you contrast it with the prominence of the search for the Malaysian aeroplane following that tragedy. Same number of people, enormous international concern, hundreds of millions of pounds spent on the search, but as yet very little effort made internationally to support the Nigerian government in tackling this awful event.
Well, we'll come to what we're doing in a second, but very little being done by the Nigerian government itself. Goodluck Jonathan, their leader, has said very little about this, which is dumbfounding in a way.
Well, I think the important thing is not to point fingers about the past, but to focus now on the fact that hundreds of these girls are terrified, living in appalling conditions, and we need to rescue them as fast as we possibly can. And the international community, with Britain, America, others, should do everything we possibly can to support the Nigerian government in finding them and rescuing them.
Virginia, do you think we could negotiate with them, or the authorities could negotiate with Boko Haram?
Well, over the years, the Nigerian government has tried to start a dialogue with the groups, or at least with some elements within the group. And I understand that behind the scenes, some of these talks continue. However, every time some of these discussions have been made public, Abu Bakr Shekau, the leader of the group, has immediately denied that any form of negotiation could actually take place.
I mean, the kidnap of these schoolgirls is shocking, but this kind of thing has happened in the region before. Not necessarily Islamic fundamentalists, but religious fundamentalists have done very similar things already.
Yes, and Boko Haram has been responsible of other kidnappings in the past of young women and girls who have been used as sex slaves in Boko Haram's camps. They've also kidnapped high-profile Nigerians for the purpose of extortion. And in 2013, they've started kidnapping foreigners in Cameroon.
Andrew, what do you think the British government and the international community should now be doing?
Well, we need to help the Nigerian government find and rescue these girls. And clearly, if the Nigerian government was to ask for our help, I have no doubt at all the British government would be very willing indeed to give it. Britain, as a development power, is very heavily invested in girls' education. We understand that if you want to change the world, you do so by educating girls. And these girls, hundreds of them, are not very young. They are in their late teens. They're taking their final exams. The future of Nigeria depends upon these girls, and it's extremely important that we find them and rescue them as rapidly as possible. Can you imagine how frantic their parents and their sisters and brothers must feel as they wait day in, day out for news of this?
But just briefly, Andrew, Boko Haram will be looking at the way the US and the UK hasn't done what it set out to do in Syria, the way it's dealing with Russia invading Ukraine. They'll think, actually, we don't have to do anything, because they're not going to do anything.
Well, let us demonstrate that we find it absolutely intolerable, repugnant that this can happen, and give the Nigerian government, who are a significant military power in their own right, let us give them every possible support, technical and otherwise, so that they can find and rescue these girls.